Welcome guys, gals and non-binary pals to this week's episode of Buffy Boys, your weekly review of Buffy the Vampire Slayer from a queer, literary and feminist perspective. My name is Joel, one of your hosts, and with me as always is your other enfranchised host,
Brian. Hi.
I went weirdly news presentary there.
I don't know who that person was.
No, it was like a weird ghost coming out from inside my throat.
Joel. How's it going? My name is Joel and I'm bisexual. I never stop talking about it.
I think you talk about me by far more than I do at this point.
That is the biggest lie I've ever heard in my fucking life.
Absolutely
You're
true.
such a fucking liar. Joel just walks around. Like, you walk around with like bi paraphernalia.
Yeah, so that's not my clothes are speaking for me.
That's so.
Well, you walk around with that limp wrist, and I don't say that you're evangelizing.
We had this conversation a couple of weeks ago. I was like, well, Joe, you know, you have a very limp wrist. And he was like, no, I don't. I would never. And while doing this, just gesticulating unawarely, wildly with his wrists.
I gesticulate.
That's some internalized homophobia right there, Joel.
I gesticulate, but it's very structural. It's like declarative movements, pointing.
Like the
right angles.
You know, yeah, exactly. A right angle, a 90 degree between your wrist and your hand.
No, that's a floppy angle. I don't like it.
It's what you do.
So this week,
what's with the campphobia there, Joel?
There's absolutely no campphobia.
No need for that.
Might not be the first person to accuse me of it, but you'll be the last. I don't know what that means.
So the person who accused you of it has a worse time going for them these days, anyway. So
yeah. I won in the court of public opinion on that particular one.
If we're ever doing a
live
episode, ask us about who accused you of campphobia.
Yeah.
Anyway. Okay. Buffy
Boys.
Buffy and Summary.
Yeah.
Okay, so this episode is season 5, episode 13's Blood Ties, was first aired on February 6th, 2001. It was directed by Michael Gershman and was written by Stephen S. DeKnight. So Stephen S. DeKnight is pretty interesting. He's most well known for his work on Spartacus on Stars and the Spartacus spin-offs.
Spins off, I like.
That was intentional. He goes on to write about 5 episodes, I think, of Buffy, and story edited a lot of episodes. He was the show, and he writes for Angel 2, and he goes on to write for Dollhouse. He was the showrunner on season 1 of Daredevil.
Okay.
Which is quite good.
Yeah, we enjoy it.
I think probably considered to be the best season of Daredevil. And he directed Pacific Rim Uprising. So, yeah. Anyway, here's your Buffy answer. Buffy tells the other Scoobies about Dawn. Dawn guesses from their behavior that something is going on. Spike... it sounds like that's gonna rhyme. Spike helps her break into the magic shop where she reads Giles' diaries. Distraught, she cuts herself and burns her diaries. She goes to the hospital where she confides in Ben, who transforms into Glory. Buffy and the others arrive and fight Glory, who is easily beating them when Willow teleports her 5 miles into the air. That was a really difficult one for me to get through, apparently. I'm not sure why.
That was a collection of things that happened.
Yeah.
Before we get into the meaty developments of this particular episode, which I actually say unsarcastically, for our bronze banter, we wanted to talk about the number one televisual event that we've been watching this week, which is what was it, Brian? What were we going to talk about? Oh, the United States election. Yeah.
Because I mean, presumably, like, you know, if you're listening to Buffy Boys, you probably haven't heard about it yet. You don't know anything about it, and you haven't watched hundreds of hours of YouTube videos about it so far.
Okay, well, the last part was just talking about you.
The whole thing was talking about me, Joe.
Okay, yeah, true. But it could be applied that many people have heard about the election, but not necessarily gone to the level of fandom and lore keeping that you do.
See, the thing is, Kay, whatever about the like not obsession, the fascination that I have with US politics, and you know, ending up watching tons of MSNBC. I've been there for the last 5 years.
You have, absolutely.
Constant. I've been following all the updates, and
you're OG.
I'm OG. You're a fucking bandwagon jumper.
Oh, well,
Joel's sitting there beside me crying while Kamala Harris is giving her speech. And if Joel knew who Kamala Harris was, actually, you know what, Joel? I showed you during the presidential debate, or the Democratic debates, I showed you Kamala Harris destroying Joe Biden, a couple of lines from it, and you're like, I don't care. And now you're like, beautiful, amazing moment, wonderful.
I do not have the constitution that you have or the emotional fortitude to engage with it for as long as you have. I need to just come in, take you know, we say it'll be big cry. We watched the speeches. We watched Frasier. We watched Sister. We drank wine and then slept in. And now I was like, and now I purged it from my system.
Yeah. Anyway, so have you been following it? Like, so if you're listening to this in the future, today is Tuesday. On Saturday, most networks announced 5 days after the election, because there was lots of mail-in ballot nonsense, for Joe Biden for president of the United States. 46th, maybe 47th president if Mike Pence comes along, and or if Trump resigns so that Mike Pence can absolve him, or the other one.
Pardon
him. Thank you. Pardon me. But the... Yeah, so on Saturday that was announced. We stayed up late on Saturday watching the victory speeches by Kamala Harris and Joe Biden. Highlights from that, I think, were almost entirely in Kamala Harris's speech. Joe Biden, he's not a great speech maker. He's certainly no Obama. He was all about unity and stuff, and that's nice, reaching across the aisle and whatnot. But Kamala Harris's speech was quite notable. She is a Black and South Asian woman who, like, you know, was part of like busing programs in terms of, like, you know, school and stuff. And she's now the Vice President of the United States. So she's the first woman, certainly the first Black woman, and certainly the first South Asian person to be in the White House as a president or vice president. Yeah. So that's huge.
First graduate of a historically Black college or university as well.
Absolutely, yeah. She has some. We have some question marks around her in terms of she has had a history of some like litigate as Attorney General in California, litigating some like anti-trans stuff and anti-sex work stuff. So we're going to be keeping a close eye on that, of course, as a world. But very importantly, we were both very touched by Joe Biden, specifically when he was thanking the different his coalition, essentially the different people who voted for him. One of the people he thanked were, he's saying, straight, gay, bisexual. I didn't say bisexual, disgusting.
No, he didn't.
Transgender people. And it's the first time a president has thanked trans people in their speech in these instances. And while, I'm 100% aware that can be read as kind of breadcrumby, what's that phrase?
Piecemeal?
Yeah, it's very, picking up morsel, taking the morsels they're giving you in terms of progression. It's a huge step forward, and it was with ease. It was, I would have to imagine, for a lot of young trans people who were struggling with their identities or just struggling with the world around them, that's a huge salve, knowing that you're the president of the United States is and you're one of the people who I like,
Yeah.
I know because when Obama said that in 2008, in his acceptance speech, he thanked the gay community. That was huge. Yeah. It was big. It was a watershed moment.
I think a lot of this is resolved, or at least consolidated, by being able to appreciate the positive aspects of something and the progression, while still saying that something needs to go further.
Yeah.
And people often struggle with that all or nothing approach. Either it's perfect and celebrities and we stan, or the worst thing and immediately let's talk about how it's all terrible. It's you need to be able to strike a balance, and this 100%. Is it was a cogent speech. It was in the right direction. It's all the right things, and even if he's saying all the things we like, just because it tests well, as I say to you, at least we test well.
That's it. Yeah. The other thing is that now Trump is trying to suggest that he has actually won the election. It is hilarious and brilliant to watch. If you are in the future, I bet this hasn't been mentioned in a while, but go read your Wikipedia page for the Four Seasons
total landscaping.
It'll be a treat.
It is one of the greatest comedic moments of our time. It is Nathan Fielder level. It is, and what I think is very actually appropriate about it is, and I can't remember if I've talked about on the podcast specifically about this before, but how I really feel that this period of time has really killed satire and comparative comedy.
Yeah, and Veep is impossible to watch now because it's everything that they do in Veep, so much worse has happened.
Yeah, but this is like from the return from the back row kind of thing. This is Veep level comedy. It's happening in real life. Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll keep an eye on that. There have been actual discussions of will Trump try to engender a bunch of faithless electors, and in terms of the electoral college, and potentially just litigate this into a win. It's pretty much impossible, but we'll see. The other thing is that Pfizer, a big pharmaceutical company, announced coronavirus vaccine yesterday.
A very promising mid-level trial for the vaccine.
Well, no, it's very late stage trial.
Well,
so,
I suppose, mid-level in terms of like it's not at the stage where it's necessarily. Anyway, it's in the right direction.
Which is apparently 90% effective in terms of preventing contracting the virus, which would be starting to roll out by the end of the year. It's mad. It's weird because like the whole world was very like, oh, an end to this? That doesn't seem likely in our kitchen. But yeah, we'll see. So those are the two big pieces of news.
So I'll say this very briefly. This about a week and 2 weeks ago or something of this. I don't think I mentioned it. Michael Bay is releasing a film about a near future where it's 4 years into the COVID, into a COVID, blah blah blah.
They call it COVID-24.
COVID-23, yeah. And people are trapped in their apartments, and it's like a purge like situation where the state are coming along and giving you temperature tests and kicking down your doors and executing you, and like one brave fucking Deliveroo driver who like tries to cross the city during quarantine to reach his girlfriend, etc. It's incredibly irresponsible. It's incredibly fucking stupid. Peter Stormare is in it, who I imagine will probably be very good in it, and so is oh gosh, your man from West Wing,
oh come on,
Josh Lyman.
Oh, Bradley Whitford.
But
who I refer to as Bradley Whittaker.
Yeah.
Bradley, yeah. I call him Bradley Whittaker, I'd say 20 times a week.
But a movie which is basically capitalizing on people's fears, or like a worst case, or like a kind of a doomsday, a Black Mirror scenario around COVID, must have been rushed into production immediately soon after the outbreak, probably adapting a kind of shitty script that already existed and reframing it, I would imagine, as a COVID, and just highly irresponsible, and valorizing someone who is brave enough, like a fucking a Winston Smith Orwellian figure of defying the COVID regulations. Yeah. It is. I'm livid at it. I'm genuinely livid.
It's fascinating. The trailer is great. Okay, Buffy.
Okay, so
speaking about Bloodborne. Well, it's not Bloodborne. Blood. Fire is blood.
Speaking about things that involve hospitals at one point.
That was your weakest.
That was
one
my weakest. I knew it. I threw it away. That's a throwaway.
Yeah.
So in this episode of Buffy, we are mid-season, heavy plot, heavy setting the tone and the trajectory for the rest of the season in terms of the actual big bad. So we have huge information dumped through this episode. We have all the Scoobies finding out that Dawn is the key.
Dawn finding out
she's the key. Us finding out that Glory and Ben share a body. And I don't think Glory finds out that Dawn is the key.
No, of course not.
That doesn't happen yet.
Yeah, because they don't share information between each other. Glory and Ben don't know what each other knows. They have to communicate through the minions. Yeah. And we also find out that people who see Dawn, Glory and Ben transform into each other immediately forget it. Well, not immediately, very soon afterwards.
But can't retain it, yeah.
Yeah, it's impossible to retain.
Humans who see it. Because the fact that Spike can see it.
Oh, that's a plot point later on in the season,
and keeps telling them and no one remembers is like a comedic point later on. And also, a kind of perfunctorily, but importantly at the start of the episode, after the council have left, Giles reiterates that new information, which is that Glory was one of 3 Helgogs in her dimension.
I'm sure the comic book based on that is great.
Yeah, who was banished here, and she needs the key to return, and that by being here she is losing her sanity. And also like a little bit of piece about like how, Anya talks about how there's loads of hell dimensions and all this kind of stuff. So like actually quite like a huge amount of information imparted in this episode.
Yeah, and I think for my money's worth, it struggles a little bit as an episode because of it. I think there are parts of the episode where like they're trying to shove so much information in, and there are other parts where there's nothing happening. Dawn wandering around forlorn, like sadly as a cloud, and then so I think because of the information dump, they end up losing a plot in some ways, but there's lots of thrilling moments and it's quite good in other ways. So yeah, quite good episode. I think one of the most fascinating things about the episode is the kind of the existential identity issues therein. So obviously you have Dawn like play acting every existential crisis anyone's ever had. First off, she finds out that she's the key by going with Spike to the magic shop to find to find Giles' diary
yeah.
in his very cool little sneaky cupboard. And through doing that, she discovers that she's a key. And when the Scooby next sees her, she has split her wrist open to cut herself to show that she's bleeding. She's like, "Is this even blood?"
Yeah.
Which is a very evocative moment. Very unusual decision to make in terms of the writing of the episode. But existentially, it kind of like calls back to the kind of, first note would have to be Merchant of Venice. The idea that that definition of humanity, or if you prick us, do not bleed, kind of thing. And then just I think there's a certain level above the existential crises that have happened on this show, which have been mostly moral. This is I was going to say existential. This is
material.
This is material. It's that kind of Cartesian cogito ergo sum kind of nonsense of, am I thinking? Am I extant?
Yeah.
Which is all pretty great. And then further on in the episode, just all the split between Ben and Glory, and Glory's specific internal division of her sanity balance. It makes for good, rich water of who am I, what am I,
Yeah, it's a great stock, a great thematic stock. And so I think I was surprised at the amount of actual engagement with that existential question, in terms of not just whether she's real, which is like a very broad way to describe it, but even within that, it's some interesting moments where for one thing, it's Buffy's birthday in this episode. Woman's only 20 years old.
I was like, it must be her 22nd birthday or something.
Yeah.
Because I was like, she ends up being 23 at the end of the show, and I was like, yeah, 22nd then.
Yeah, the absolute vertigo of being like, yeah.
Like, if we met a 20-year-old right now, we'd be like, disgusting child.
Yeah, baby.
Yeah.
Apologies to all our 20-year-old listeners out there. But at her birthday, Dawn gives her a present, which is a picture of them when they were kids, with shells she collected on the beach. And which I think is fascinating, because how extensive is this spell?
Yeah.
And so there's a few exchanges where
it managed to create Kevin Spacey diaries as well, where. Yeah, I must have mentioned that on this podcast before, but one of my favorite things about any movies of all time is the fact that in Seven, the movie, the character who Kevin Spacey plays, who I don't think has a name in the movie.
No, he doesn't. John Doe, I think is what they call him.
Yeah. Has an extensive collection of diaries, which he has been, but the props were filmed in the opening sequence over a Nine Inch Nails song, and otherwise don't really feature in it. But some prop maker spent weeks designing those and filling them in completely. And
they're full of disturbing, crazy writing and all this kind of stuff.
Horrifying imagery.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the spell managed to create it
Dawn has diaries going back just until she was, I think, 7 or something.
Yeah.
Like that.
So yeah, definitely a very powerful spell, very intricate spell.
Yeah, and I think there's some conversation. I think it might be Joyce who says it, that because obviously Dawn, I think, to be honest, fully understandably is grappling with what is she and what is she real and all this kind of stuff. And she's like, you are real and you are family. You're just new. And that, yes, you're 6 months old, but also it's been 6 months since you were always alive.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And so it's a really interesting question it poses. I do respect and and appreciate that Buffy's perspective through the episode, by the end of the episode, is that the instigation of something is not essential matter. It's like whatever made her sister, she is now her sister.
Yeah.
And that is as she so vividly shows, she is of the same blood.
Which of course is one of the classic responses to the existential issue is a kind of what's his name? I keep going to Dostoevsky, Kierkegaardian leap of faith of deciding that your existence has meaning, that meaning exists, and to move forward from that point. What Buffy does here, she identifies Dawn as her sister, and with that basis works from there, as opposed to kind of not inspecting that further, but instead of allowing that existential uncertainty to cripple her, or cripple her actions, which is really fascinating. One of the things I thought was really interesting, what I was just thinking there, Joel, do you think that maybe the intricacy of the spell and stuff, is it that the ball of energy that the key is, if fit into a human life, can expand that expansively, if you get me, that it manages to affect that much like of existence? Do you think it's the ability of those monks to cast a spell, or do you think it's the properties of the key once hidden manages to fill an entire life?
Great question, Ryan. It's obviously not explained, but no, I don't think that those monks happen to, like, because this is
reality bending. It's reality
bending, and its power maybe at the level of what Dark Willow is able to do. Do you know what I mean? But I would like, this is almost a similar category or level of spell as like the Slayer activation spell at the end of Chosen, I think. Yeah. So no, I think that they very deftly probably channeled the key's own energy, and I think the key is not presented as something which opens a specific portal or door or anything quite so mundane, but it is the capacity for reality change. You know, it's that kind of Franklin Richards kind of power. I
always think of Marvel, and specifically X-Men, and obviously Franklin Richards is a mutant. So, but in terms of reality bending, I think it is a great basis of reality bending, including the greatest reality bending storyline of all time.
And House of M.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Or
alternatively, the second best, of course, being Age of Apocalypse.
Yeah, and we're reasonably confident, as an aside, but that the new MCU TV show WandaVision is probably their version of the House of M,
which I will fucking adore. I like House of M is like what came at the height of my X-Men obsession.
So I think it presents a very interesting question. I think it's yes, I think the key has to be apocalyptic. It actually does have the power to create things retroactively. So I think as much as it is there, I think this episode moves us from everyone remembers Dawn was there to this kind of material evidence she was there. And if she was there in every way that currently matters, what's the real difference between her having been there or not? Yeah.
I mean, if all if you're taking it from that approach, it's that kind of experiential information. If it exists, entirely, then what's to say it didn't happen? I mean, like, what's the conclusive difference? And yeah, it's very funny because it only works in the TV medium, because something popping into existence doesn't really work in a movie. And it doesn't really work in it certainly wouldn't work in real life, if you get me. Because if something just popped into existence and always had been there, then it always was there.
One of the postulations of the many worlds theory and that kind of suggestion that multiple universes time travel and the effect that will have, etc., is that if time travel, for example, is possible, we wouldn't be able to tell if things had changed. As you say, there is no external observer to say that, maybe up until, like, to take an example we had there, maybe up until yesterday there never was a TV show called Buffy the Vampire Slayer, but now because that changed, that's all we remember, if you understand what I mean by that.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely.
Actually, I mentioned this much earlier on the podcast, but one of the interesting, at times controversial decisions that was taken by the Buffy comics, not the sequel comics,
the new comics.
No.
Oh, the current,
the ones that were released while the show was on air.
Current to the TV show. Contemporary.
They make a very specific and very deliberate editorial decision that after season 5, anything that was released that was set prior to season 5, Dawn was present for it,
which is great.
Which some people didn't like. I've read them, and it actually introduces a really interesting element to it. But I think it's a really textured.
I have a suggestion for you as well, which is that, like, this uniquely works in the format of television because of how television was consumed at the time. Going back and rewatching wasn't really a thing. You could maybe rewatch Buffy if it started getting shown on E4 in the morning, or I'm not sure where reruns would occur for Buffy in the States or Canada or anything. But it just, if this television mode is supposed to be, this week and then gone, and on a continuous basis, feeling like Dawn's here and always has been, is so hard to kind of like confirm in some ways. You know, you're like, oh no, my memories say that she was never here, but they're saying that she always was. It's a very fascinating medium through which to communicate it. Unlike, say, a book where you get to scrub back and just check, or a movie which doesn't have the longevity to really be significant. It's a really, really it's fascinating approach to it. And of course, that being totally useless now, because it's much less powerful because of the proliferation of first box sets and now streaming services.
Yeah, it's made for the medium and for the time. I kind of like that. Like, not like we have because we have moved into a generation where things can be returned to indefinitely, and you can replay archival approaches.
Everything is very important, you know.
Yeah, and that's definitely, and like, there's merit to that, but I don't think we should ever lose the fact that sometimes you have to be there. Yeah, that brings such an important element to things.
Agreed. Yeah.
So yeah, I quite like that, and I find these episodes have been reframing. Or have me reapproach my thinking about Dawn in many ways, because like with kind of the glancing recollection I have of all the Dawn stuff, like one of the things is she's annoying and she is kind of emo about things and kind of very teenagey, and something that always stood to mind was her kind of, you know, how she runs away in this episode, she burns things, she cooks herself, and she is like, she's
rude to the teachers.
Yeah, roots to teachers, apparently. And it's like, in context, so like, this is all fairly understandable reaction, I think.
I was more of a shithead than that when, and like, you know, I
wasn't the key.
I definitely wasn't a ball of energy.
Yeah, ball of sunshine, Brian. That's you.
I was a ball of pitch black night. I was actually a fine kid in lots of ways. I was just very obstinate. Anyway, we should have our parents on at some point, and they can just talk on this podcast about like how shit we were as children, and your mother will be like, he was perfect in every way. One time he, like, you know, fell, and he didn't fall at all.
No, actually,
he flew.
Yeah. That reminds me of one of my favorite things about Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. It's like, how you learn how to fly is you just fall and you forget to hit the ground.
It becomes less of a great point about Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy when everyone who's read or watched any property or listened to any property of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy insists on telling you every single joke from it every single fucking day.
It's pretty funny.
It's people who like Hitchhiker's Guide too much are the same as people who like Monty Python too much.
They're often the same people.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
You made my point for me. Anyway, definitely a nice element of this episode is the Spike Dawn interactions, which continue on in the show when you get to the beginning of season 6, when Dawn is I think Dawn and Spike are traveling around on the bike, avoiding the hordes of vampires and stuff.
Demon bikers.
Yeah, bikers. And certainly in the next episode, in the episode following the body, they try to I was going to say resuscitate, resurrect Joyce together. 3
very different actions.
Just generally, I think it's a very fun relationship. I like it. You know, it's not a fun relationship though.
What's that?
Xander and Dawn, where today in this episode he was like, "Oh yeah, you're such a lovely real person," and he's just like, "I'm talking to a 14-year-old," and in the comics they are full on banging.
Yeah, they are in a sexual relationship in the comics. That's
disgusting.
True. The comics aren't even like that far in the future.
No, it's like 3 years.
How old is Dawn at the end of
Buffy? So she's 14 now.
14 now, yeah.
15 season 6. 16 season 7.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, I think season 8 takes place a couple of years after.
Let's say she's 20 even. No, in fairness, Buffy is 20 here. But like the whole thing is just, Xander's just
the worst thing about it is that he's watched her grow up.
Yeah.
And he certainly has memories of her growing up.
Yeah.
And that's called grooming.
Okay. So it's a bold statement to say that Xander Harris is a groomer, but
I would never suggest that Xander Harris has ever groomed himself in his life. This episode surely suggests that his hair is fucking awful. It's lank and disgusting, and I hate it.
Yeah.
Okay, back on track. I don't know. I suppose want to highlight this one of many birthday episodes for Buffy, usually occurring in episode 12 or 13 of the season. The absolute highlights, of course, being Surprise. Other ones being the Cruciamentium episode, which is called, what's it called?
We can never remember it.
It's God. Hey, yeah. And was there one in season 4? No, there wasn't. They skipped in season 4.
I think they missed her birthday in season 4. Yeah.
Yeah, fair enough. But yeah, this one was interesting. It was kind of quiet. I think everyone really had a dampener put on it because of the information about Dawn.
Yeah, she ruined it.
But Joyce was there, and I was happy about that.
She was very much part of it. Yeah, it's interesting. I think we start to see some there's some good ensemble moments. There's a nice bit with Charles when Anya's talking about how everyone, she wants Buffy's dress, and how everyone was thinking the same thing. And Charles like, I absolutely was not. I already have one just like it. That was quite funny.
The worst part about it, though, is that he says that only to Xander. And it's like, that's the worst person to say that to you.
Yeah,
say to anyone else.
You won't get it.
No.
And yeah, so we see some parallels as well, because now that we're seeing this kind of existential question around Dong and about the family and the Summers family, like a lot of the strong villains in Buffy, that's kind of parallel with Glory as well, because Glory's both her situation in this reality, but also her relationship with Ben and where the dividing line is there. That is kind of a reflection of what's happening with the Summers.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's the insidious potential, like this kind of scary thing that lives inside the house, the house in this instance, meaning of course the body as well.
Yeah. And specifically, I think it might be Glory who says this, or it could be Ben, but they specifically refer to their relationship as brother and sister.
Yeah, gross.
Which I think is obviously quite reflective as well.
One of the interesting things about this episode though as well is that Dawn he plays it super cool when it comes to Ben. Like, she should never have told Ben that she was the key. That was insane. But she does, she manages to hold her own against Glory in a sense, because she's like, oh, Glory, tell me about this key. Mm-hmm. Or Glory's like, have you seen the key? And she's like, no, maybe if you told me more about it, I'd know.
Yeah.
So Glory then does like a very convincing version of the villain monologue instead of killing you,
Yeah.
And that buys enough time and information that Dawn manages to survive it.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, which is just I thought it was sleuthy and smart and quite good. It was, as you highlighted while watching, it was definitely part of the Summers survival instinct and intelligence. Yeah,
so that kind of maybe not with with Buffy the book learning, but like the practical skills and the practical intuition she has, and even the way that Dawn was able to kind of suss out what was happening with the key and that find it in the magic box, but also put the pieces together. The book was saying people who are mentally unstable can see the key, and she was able to pull together a few disparate instances she's had where people were
and the thing about the snakes as well.
Yeah, as well. So yeah, I think that they do a very convincing job of making her a Summers woman, as opposed to just being like the kid sister, but doesn't have an integrated personality. Mm-hmm. And yeah, they being able to hold her own against Glory conversationally, I think was quite effective as well. And then my favorite moment of the episode being the actual fight at the end of the episode, Glory versus the Scooby gang. And most of the Scoobs fall pretty easily. I thought Buffy did. I think there's significant progress in terms of Buffy's battling with Glory. Yeah. In the previous two instances where they did battle, she very quickly was overpowered. Mm-hmm. And in this instance, it feels like because she is fighting for Dawn specifically and not just for herself, if you get me, she's more innovative. She held her own a bit more, yeah. She's kind of has her information around her, and yeah, she gets in a couple of good knocks, and then in a very fun moment, Willow and Tara fuck a bunch of glitter at Claire Kramer, like literally clearly pour glitter over the woman's head. Yeah, and she gets poofed into the air, which is fun. Yeah, that's actually quite funny that she goes teleport 5 miles into the air and you see her plummet like an asteroid. And before she plummets, she goes, "Oh shit!" Yeah, which I think is very funny, kind of early 90s network kind of stuff, where it's like you can almost maybe imply a swear, and they like Star Trek Discovery just like fucking Borg or whatever. That's true. That's streaming though, in fairness. Yeah, no, I know, but it's just like the tone of this stuff, the window has really shifted. Honestly. So true. Yeah. Okay. Well, shall we move into the dusting? Please do, Brian. Okay. So Buffy Bits. I have basically none. Mark Field suggests that the Knights are based on the Knights Templar and the kind of Crusade imagery. It's pretty clear. I was thinking to myself, like, where do you get chainmail in this day and age, or that day and age? Cosplayers. But God, it must be so fucking difficult to like be like, could someone give me some chainmail? Mark Field also highlights the major theme of split personality and kind of like internal conflict within the season. So we saw that in The Replacement, and I think we're going to see that a lot in Buffy's experience in the penultimate episode of the season, where she has to try to integrate the kind of Slayer and
human side of herself and ultimately not be able to, I think. Well, I cannot wait to discuss the implications of Buffy's death at the end of the season, because
I had one of these moments where I just felt like, God, isn't Buffy a great show? It just kind of came over me there for a second.
It's really good. And like, most of my notes from the episode are just I love Claire Kramer and just about that. Anyway, do you have any Buffy bits, Joe?
Yeah, so I suppose one of the key bits of information Giles and Parks in this episode is about the brain sucking, and that specifically like taking what holds the human, what makes a human a human, as opposed to a collection of parts, and she feeds off of that, which I think is really, really thematically linked with her threat. Yeah. And there's a little poignant moment where Tara says, at least vampires just kill you. Because obviously that's going to happen to poor old Tara. I appreciated, I have written out here that Spike is the most emasculated man in history. Okay. Because just like Dawn taking the piss out of him inside the house, like, what are you doing here with this crumpled box of chocolates? I'm scared.
Which is the one who's beating up in the previous episode.
Yeah, so it's like, I'm scarier than you, and him trying to be like, being like, please pretend to be scared. It's like, what a far
how far he's fallen.
How far he's fallen. And as you know, I appreciate when Buffy bursts on him in his crypt, an incredibly sunlit crypt. He's in the middle of painting his nails, and she just pushes him pulls the lid of the grave out from underneath him, which is such a cool little sequence.
Yeah. Buffy spends so much fucking time in that crypt. It's actually unbelievable.
And also, just structurally, one odd piece from this episode is that there's a scene where the minions attack the Knights of Byzantium, and then Glory turns up and fights them as well. And it's a scene involving three factions, none of whom are the Scoobies.
Yeah, it was very odd.
Which is, I think, for kind of atypical. Yeah. And presenting this idea, and then of course you have the monks of Dagon as well. So like that, this is entire kind of bargain basement kind of fantasy thing happening behind the scenes on this whole particular point.
No doubt.
And I think that what will become more relevant to our conceptualization of the mythos of Buffy in future is what Anya volunteers in this episode, is the idea that there are multiple different hell dimensions. Yeah. So previously, often when we've seen hell, it's been that, Angelus or Angel literally went to kind of present it as the Christian hell. Yeah. And then Buffy was trapped in a pocket hell in Aang, but it's always been on the edge of this, which is that really it's fantasy by way of sci-fi, is that like it's other dimensions which are hellish in nature, impressing in upon our kind of our one safe haven in the dark.
And the heaven that Buffy describes is no way like traditional like Christian heaven. So
yeah.
Okay. So fashion notes. I know that Anya was wearing a dress at one point that had a full on, just looked like she was wearing lino. Linoleum. Yeah. Do Americans have a linoleum floor?
Okay, so I may take control of this particular sentence. Americans would know what linoleum is, but we call it lino.
Yeah, we do. I liked Dawn's top that said Little Miss Drama. That was good. I also, this isn't a fashion note, but I also liked the unicorn candle that we both pointed out that they have in the magic shop to read by, which is kind of funny. And I do like the glitter bomb that they throw at Claire Kramer. Also, Buffy's wearing a like fluffy, incredibly oversized top throughout the kind of like the searching elements of the episode. And this is one of the only episodes I've seen of Buffy where it feels like it's actually potentially cold out. Like everyone is wearing like quite warm stuff, which is unusual. Do you have any fashion notes, Joe? Yeah,
Buffy's wearing like a big long metallic scarf at one point, which looks like a particularly gay giant snake shedding skin. And Giles, for a lot of his more evocative conversations, is wearing a kind of tan jacket, which just I don't like particularly light suit jackets or that kind of thing, unless it's like they're linen, which this wasn't. So it didn't particularly suit him.
I did like Giles's like workout clothes though, where he's just kind of like in a sweat top and stuff.
And as you know, Alexander just looks
awful,
like a mess once again. Like he needs to be queer-eyed.
Oh, he really does.
I would be behind that. Yeah.
Not literally though. Okay, death count. Do you have any, Joe?
So yeah, we got a few deaths in this episode. We have 3 generic Glory minions are killed by the Knights of Byzantium, and 3 of the Knights are killed by Glory with a sword. Glory kills a security guard who walks in on Bang and Dong, but the guy like it's odd because he's no reason to be there, so like he literally is burst in to get killed. And Dreg, who was one of the named featured minions in the previous episode, is killed by the Knights as well. So yeah, kind of a bloody episode.
Jeepers. Okay, and rating. Do you have a rating for me, Joel?
Yeah, I would probably give this. I'm worried of my snatch list from you.
Yeah, go on.
Probably give this 8.1 unicorn candles.
Oh, okay, no, you're fine. Okay, great. Tell me about
that. Yeah, like I know that it's not usually, we usually will depreciate episodes which are sacrifice the plot of the episode for the plot of the arc, but I think that what's imparted here is really interesting. I think the presentation of the idea of the key and Glory and the relationship there and the relationship with the Summers is relatively simple to be understandable, but in a way which has, in the best traditions of genre, has like emotional resonance. And I just think, yeah, it invites a lot of possibilities, which are very interesting. I think given the information that's being imparted, by and large, everyone handles it pretty well.
Getcha. I'm going to give it a 7.9 big love and traumas out of 10.
That wasn't what I was going to say.
Yeah, I thought that's what I was going to say because it was by far the best line from the episode. Sure. Or my other very good option was Less Frilly, More Killy, which is my other favorite podcast. But yeah, so actually, you know what? All Fill and No Kill is by far my favorite podcast, I think. I'm trying to think of my other favorite ones. No, I don't think so. So yeah, 7.9. I thought it was good. I thought it had weak points. I thought it was a little lacking in times. Dawn wandering around is a bit meh. Some of the scenes around the birthday stuff was a bit like underwritten. But yep, the advancement content is good and the thematic content is quite engaging. You kind of get the sense that Joss Whedon had his hands over the important parts and someone else handled the other parts. Yeah, I liked it well enough, but only well enough. Yeah. Should we move on to the Delia Chase?
Absolutely.
Great, I'll be back in 5 minutes.
Okay. I don't blame you. Cordelia Chase, this week's episode of Angel, is called Happy Anniversary. I think it's probably one of my least favorite episodes of Angel.
I can't believe that your dislike is more than the one the previous week, but go on.
For a number of specific reasons. Because it brings back a lot of the elements of Angel season 1 where it was weakest. So the basic premise being that we still have the main gang separated from Angel, who's doing his own kind of broody investigator thing. And as often happens when you separate someone, and there's a small enough ensemble cast on Angel to start with, and he's divorced from all of his usual players, which means that for him to interact with someone else, they could bring someone else in.
That's Lauren.
A one-off companion, yeah. So they have the Lauren, who's still being referred to as the host.
When does he start getting referred to as Lauren?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's the end of this season. But first time we see him out of his bar, first time we see him actively involved in something, he says that he regs someone telepathically who is going to cause the end of the world. That kind of precipitates it. And it's basically that there's a grad student who is involved with very roughly sketched like time experiments.
MIT kind of.
Yeah.
Kind of CERN-y.
Yeah. And there is a demon cult who see him as the prophesied human who will end all the other humans, but using science and max equations and stuff. And that they give him the proper formula which, when he does his experiment, is going to freeze the whole world in a moment of time.
But he thinks it's going to be able to freeze the moment where he comes in his girlfriend who's about to break up with him.
Yeah.
And that's the moment that he'll freeze.
So the girlfriend stuff is actually entirely incidental initially, because he's doing the experiment, they give him the formula. Over the course of it, and with no input from the demons or no particular concern, it seems, his girlfriend is going to break up with him, and he orchestrates that they're going to have a dinner, a perfect evening, and when they're having sex for their anniversary, and when they're having sex, he's going to freeze them her a moment of time with him in his bedroom. And what eventually happens is this bubble expands. And it's going to consume. There's myriad problems with it. The central premise of what he's doing is incredibly icky and incredibly gross and incredibly horrible. Yeah. And it is presented as almost like a foible.
A bumbling. Oh, I like the text is, oh, I thought it would just affect us. Awful that it affected the whole world though. And it's like, Trapping someone into having sex with you forever is also pretty fucking bad. You fucking creep.
And Angel has a conversation with him where it's presenting almost comedically, where he's like, "Oh, it's hard to get rejected, and I know it's like to end the world because of your girlfriend." And it's like, no, this person needs to be executed or something. But even around that, all the texture around that, the conversation she has with her friend about breaking up with him is actually quite reasonable. So like his reaction is like so,
which he overhears. That's how he knows.
He overhears it, exactly. And aside from his actions, this guest actor, God love him, his entire performance is sedated. It's like he is drugged out of his mind for the entire thing.
I'd agree.
All of the interactions, it harkens back to those season 1 episodes where it was almost like we were going to see a day in the life of the victim, and then Angel would swoop in because it's these big, bright, coloured shirts, big, bright, kind of cardboardy environments, and these really basic conversations where it's like, hey, you're the office jokester, like that kind of thing.
I can't believe he got that grant.
Yeah, it's awful. I've listened to a lot of technobabble, and this is like not even trying, like how they try to describe, they're just saying the top level titles of Wikipedia articles. It doesn't mean anything what they're saying. And then as some of the analysis on points 8 that I've read is like the actual plan doesn't make sense either, because if they're freezing the whole thing, then the power grid is going to be frozen as well. So, and what's the end game if all humans are frozen, then everything else is frozen? It doesn't really, it falls apart at first glance, at first blush.
Also, like, I mean, how is he planning on enjoying this frozen moment for all time?
Yeah, awful. And in terms of the separation, I understand the narrative idea of him trying to like protect the gang by getting rid of them or whatever, but it does lead to these episodes where, you know, there's a bit of funny stuff where they get their own
side plot of being investigators. Yeah,
they get their own side plot with their new offices, and Wesley's still current girlfriend Virginia is trying to put business their way. The best and the funniest part of the episode is where we drop in halfway through a contract they're on, and it's basically a murder mystery. Agatha Christie kind
it's more Hercule Poirot.
Hercule Poirot. Well, he was one of Agatha Christie's characters.
So it's Hercule Poirot.
Agatha Christie is not the actual.
Yeah, no, I'm going insane. I'm going insane.
But where he's like doing the locked room mystery, or like it was actually Anne telling. So like that's quite funny. And I like Lorne being introduced.
Yeah, but he's bad in this though.
He's bad in this, and the interactions between him and Angel are like, there's no voice for it yet. So like I'm going to wrap it up there and go to say that also the demons are like, it's like they've taken a Jewish stereotype of an undertaker and given them demonic makeup.
It wasn't good.
It was weird. It was weird.
How about if you're in the costume department or in the creature creation department of any property of all time, look at your stuff and say, does this seem vaguely Jewish in some way?
Yeah.
And if so, don't fucking do it, you fucking idiot.
Yeah. And when I say that, I mean specifically there was very broad and clear, like a kind of like a rabbi or a Orthodox Jewish kind of community vibe to it, and speaking in the demonic language, but the language of the old country. Like that was the whole tone of it. So it was very odd. So yeah, like 4 feminist gestures for me.
You give it a 3?
3 failed feminist gestures. I think I really don't like this episode because I don't like when they do science fiction trappings badly. I like
Buffy does science fiction way better than
I like when they're kitschy, and that's fine. I actually just think the central guy is just horrible. I just don't like him. He reminds me of the guy in season 1 who took his eyeballs out to creep on women. As like that kind of like, you know, I don't even want to say it's of a time, but like a certain tone of 90s and early 2000s show where it's like that stuff could be a foible as opposed to just like really gross. It just has not aged well, I think.
No. Okay, let's wrap up. So
thanks very much for listening. I hope you're keeping well. I hope there for many of you, for many reasons, there's something of a breath starting to be released or progress in the right direction.
Next week we're going to be watching Crush, which is the episode where Drusilla comes back to Sunnydale. This one.
So until then, tell your friends about Buffy Boys, tell your unicorn candle purveyors, and we will see you next time on this podcast, which is called Buffy Boys.
Oh, Buffy.
No, damn it, Buffy.
That wasn't your greatest joke, Joel. I'm not impressed. That don't impress me much. Goodbye.